Hey guys, I'm Cornelis and welcome to Your Band is a Business. Today I'm going to be talking with my friend Oliver New, who's an artist. He runs a record label. He does all kinds of stuff in music. I won't spoil it all for you, but today we are going to talk about how to empower the independent artists, and that's what our discussion is going to be about today. Welcome, Oliver.
Thank you,
How,
Cornelis. Thank you for having me on your YouTube channel. Really
how are you
appreciate
doing
it.
today?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really good.
So we met somehow years ago. Let's not think about how long ago through the in the midst
Hmm.
of time through the music scene as you do. Tell us a bit about about yourself. Like, what's your background? Whatever you think is relevant to you as as somebody that's involved in music today.
That's a really good question, to be honest. I am originally from London and have been really passionate about music since discovering it when I was about 11. Played the cello at school and got lessons, and then it kind of flourished into me learning the guitar and starting bands and learning how to sing. And throughout my musical journey, and since I started music, I just found it was the perfect way to express my personal experiences and also create experiences for others. So that's always been really, really important to me. But music, yeah, I feel like it runs through my blood. It's like a part of who I am. I can't survive without it, and it helps me thrive, I find. And
Do,
it can be almost a therapeutic experience to put music out there in a
yeah.
way.
Do you have is music a big thing in your family?
Not really, to be honest. My sister played the recorder for a little bit when she was younger, but not really. I would say, I've got a couple of cousins who one's a drummer, and then apparently my great grandmother, I think, was a singer. But
Okay.
it's really hit and miss in my family, to be
Yeah.
honest. It's quite a random occurrence.
Yeah, that's similar to my family, where I have one aunt and uncle that play the piano and organ, and I which I've never touched, but I saw at their house one time. But other than that, I don't know anybody in my extended family that plays an instrument. So I think it's interesting to share that with people because sometimes you hear a lot of stories of, oh, I grew up in a musical family and my parents played instruments and all that kind of stuff. And so sometimes you get this story out there or this belief that you need to come from a musical family or it's in your, that it was destined to be. So it's always interesting to hear from people that just did it themselves. So that's cool.
Absolutely. I think it's sometimes it can just kind of hide for a generation and then come
Maybe,
out again, or it can
maybe.
be the people you're around inspire you into it. I didn't really have that much exposure to, I remember my dad showing me the Smiths, for example, and thinking, oh yeah, this is really decent music and things. But I think it was seeing a lot of performers that inspired me overall, seeing guitarists perform and seeing the effect it had on people. I just think it's so infectious when you first see it, and there you go. I'm still doing it to this day, almost 19 years onwards, so it does stick with you
Yeah.
massively.
And were you, so now you are, well, you wear multiple hats and we'll be going into all of that in a moment. But on the artist side of things, you are a singer, songwriter, performer. Were you always doing that, or did you have a different journey? Did you play in bands, as a guitar player, or were you always kind of the singer and the songwriter?
It's a good question as well. I was when I was younger, the first band that we ever started, it was like a group of friends, was called the Tumbleweeds, and we had this song called the Rubik's Cube Man, which we always used to play at school.
Mm.
And for that band in particular, I guess I was the singer and guitarist, but used to write together as a group with my friend Dom, who was the bassist, and Connor, who was the drummer at the time, and that was when we were about 15. And we did do some things. We got to the final of a competition with youth music in London to perform at a barfly venue, but I think we were all just like so young and didn't really understand how to perform even at this point. We were just some kids who had managed to find a studio at our school and record something. So that was one of the bands, and then I've been in kind of a lot of other bands on the journey, such as the North by South, which is one project from one of my mates that I met in London. I was in that band for a few years.
Yeah.
I've also been in the Skinner Brothers for some time, gone on tour with them. But when I started my own music, I initially was going to have a band, but I found that in terms of consistency, it might have been easier to use just a name as a brand because there's so many different moving parts of a band at all points. And I
Yeah.
knew for one thing, at least with identifying name, you never need to worry about branding too much.
Exactly. That's exactly how I arrived in my situation because like I'm not going to change my name, and no matter what happens, I'll still be here. So we were thinking exactly alike in that way. So what I've noticed about you is that there's this big DIY streak that you have. Has that always been there with you, or did you have maybe a bad experience with almost getting signed or something like that? Or were you always thinking, right, I'm going to do it myself. We're going to record our own music and we're going to put it out. Tell me about that.
So I think with when you're creating your own stuff, there is also a lot of there's just so many things to think about. It's so multifaceted when you're an independent artist, and it's only when you do it you realize the full plethora of everything that happens and goes along with it. I always did look at the big labels as perhaps the golden opportunity of exposure and guaranteed audiences, and they would handle a lot of the, say, unsexy stuff whilst you can
Mm,
get on with being a musician and just creating the music and, getting in touch with your creative soul. But I did initially start out by just releasing my own music and using whatever promotion services were out there. Let's say Submit Hub is out there, and I
yeah.
tried that, wasted a load of money.
Mm,
Playlist Push, tried it, wasted a load of money. Um, Tried ads for a bit, also just not a good experience either. So when you first start out, you're kind of looking for what is the best way to put your stuff out there. And then I tried going more old school, business cards, meeting people and trying to get them into my music that way. But the more I found all of these different avenues and how difficult they were, more it kind of made me think I have to bring something in the house here. I have to create something independently. Otherwise, you're just going to be hemorrhaging money. And
mm,
music is essentially a big money pit,
yeah.
whether people like to acknowledge it or not. Like before you even release the single, you've spent so much money on the equipment, your instruments, the laptop perhaps that you're recording with if you're doing it yourself, or if you're going to go to a studio, the producer, the studio time, and then the mixing, the mastering, the distribution, and the marketing. It
Yeah,
can
yeah,
all
yeah.
add up to a lot of money. So that's why I kind of decided that playlists were the way forward, and that has been my I would say that's been the most successful part of my journey because at the time in 2020, I could see there was a big shift to obviously digital means because of the pandemic,
Mm,
and I had a few friends who were doing it as well. And so I just started trying to grow playlists. And I think this is really advantageous because, as I said, you don't have anyone to depend on, and you can use quite a lot of different methods to grow playlists nowadays. You
mm,
can use the typical things like meta ads, but there are also lots of innovative ways, like even social media. People using TikTok to get people to go to playlists based on a mood or feeling or personality type. There's loads of ways of doing it. So, but back
yeah,
to the question, I feel like I've been burnt by what is available in
yeah,
terms of trying to put yourself out there and strive to be part of a big label,
yeah.
and learnt that it will always be better, in my opinion, to have your own tools as an independent artist to
Yeah,
thrive in the modern music industry.
yeah, yeah. It's you know, I think it's a really positive and empowering mindset to have, and it's almost one of these self-help cliches. You know, nobody's going to come and save you, they say, and I think that kind of applies to this way of thinking. And it's a situation where once, you know, don't get me wrong, it's hard work, and you're thinking when you kind of realize it, it's almost like hitting rock bottom in a way. You're like, right, I'm gonna have to do this myself, and then you're like, and in your case, you're like, right, it's gonna be all over you. Nobody's gonna come and help me out. I mean, people will come eventually, but you just have to realize, right, I'm gonna have to do this myself, otherwise nothing's gonna happen. So Oliver knew Cornelis, right, this is the reality, and so when you accept that as then and you start chipping away and doing things, and you realize, well, okay, I might be doing it on my own initially, but at least the needle is moving ever so slowly, and before the needle wasn't moving. So now when you see that happen, it's very motivational. It's still a daunting piece of work, you know, it's still a daunting challenge, but you see the needle moving, and that's you know that gives you some hope and inspiration. I j just to kind of we should actually talk a little bit about the music that you make, because you're from what I can see your primary genre is a rock genre, but then also you've released a lot of music in other genres where you've picked up a lot of experience with when it comes to the promotion. Can you talk a little bit about that, like the types of music that you make and the experiences you had promoting them?
Absolutely. So when I started out, I kind of had made up in my mind I wanted to do alternative rock. I have massive influences from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters, Say Anything, all big bands for me, and they typically stick to that genre. So that was what I expected. And my first ever song was sort of a electronic but guitar song, and then the next few were kind of more alternative rock, such as Jealousy, Invincible, Painkillers, and then kind of through the producer I was working with at the time, I ended up going into hip hop through a kind of mixtape that I was doing. And the reason for that was I think that we're all influenced by our environment. And I found that I was changing. And again, from a branding perspective, to start again can be it can be a huge, you can shoot yourself in the foot by doing it sometimes,
Mm,
I think.
yeah,
There's always the risk that you kind of start a new profile and then you keep starting new profiles and then you end up a brandless person.
yeah,
So I always stuck to the same thing. I had initially this alternative rock and electronic journey at the beginning. And then I moved more into kind of hip hop with this mixtape with an alternative producer. And then at the time with the lockdown and the pandemic, I was getting massively into therapeutic music, like lo-fi music. And I just started making it because I felt like it and I
yeah,
really enjoyed making it. And pretty much went on a side quest for almost a couple of years, just releasing lo-fi EPs after the other. And what I found was I had this big footprint of lo-fi across all of my stuff. And I also found it a lot easier to market because instrumental music, you don't have as much to think about and you don't have as much that you need to connect with as a listener.
yeah,
If you're listening to rock music with lyrics, you have to maybe potentially like the voice, the tone, the melody, the words,
yeah, yeah,
and then the aesthetic of the band and how it all fits around that. And I'd say that that's kind of where I honed the playlist strategy with the
mm.
lo-fi because
You
I
were
just focused massively on creating a playlist that I felt was the right world for all of that music to sit in
mm,
and come up with themes. Like I came up with like a sleepy themed EP called insomnia lo-fi, and that was just made for people who can't sleep or have insomnia or
Yeah,
need relaxing music late at night. And that led me down that journey of doing lo-fi.
yeah.
But
And you were getting success, a lot of success with that in terms of, if we want to talk about numbers, you're getting good success from that, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's about maybe 5 million streams on the lo-fi stuff,
Yeah,
and that is the vast majority of the streams that I have on the account. But as I said earlier, it's much easier to promote instrumental music. And kind of with the world of playlists, what you have to think is a lot of listeners are very passive and they're just going to be going through the playlist.
yeah,
And it might mean you'll be getting more streams, but you won't potentially get as many people taking a further action, like following,
yeah,
becoming a hardcore fan, checking out the socials. It's more background music.
yeah,
And I think that's just a different objective nowadays. Some people stick to the old school. I want to build a really solid fan base of followers, and I would like those people to keep coming back. Or there are other strategies where you can utilize streams.
yeah,
And just on that, I think that the way that the music industry is going, we are literally in a stream-based economy at
yeah,
this point. Like so many of the opportunities, particularly on Spotify, are unlocked by having a minimum threshold of legitimate, and it has to be legitimate
yeah, yeah,
streams. It can't be bots and stuff
yeah,
because
yeah,
they cracked onto that, and I've seen a lot of people fall from trying to do that
yeah.
strategy.
Well,
So
I mean, it's very interesting and I would say brave because I think a lot of people are really scared of doing multi-genre like that. And I myself was, and I don't know if it was seeing you, you might have been one of the people that kind of inspired me or pushed me over the edge to not be afraid of that. From my point of view, I was thinking, well, it's not like you've got a huge fan base anyway, so nobody's going to be out there disappointed. Second of all, and this kind of is in relation to your view that the stream is important because so I have a background in digital marketing, that kind of stuff. And so I work a lot. I, I'm not I don't have much experience as an SEO personally, but I've seen a lot of, I've sat next to these people and my expertise is more in paid traffic, but there's a lot of similarities in terms of keyword search and stuff like that. And so for me, my thinking was always, surely the song is the thing that is being optimized towards. And again, as you said, so much of the ecosystem, the economy is around the song and the stream and the playlist, and not so much around the artist. There's aspects outside of the stream platforms where the artist is important in the story, and that's a whole nother discussion to have. But if we're
mm,
purely talking about the algorithms, like to me, not working within from the inside, but from looking from the outside, I think, well, it must be about the streaming of the individual songs, and that means to me then, okay, there's no barrier then to ranking for your lo-fi stuff, your lo-fi um instrumental music, but then also popping off for a rock song. Like, why would that I can't see any reason why an algorithm would discriminate and say, well, this guy's a lo-fi. There might be some bias in the algorithm to like push one way and push another way a little bit. But at the end of the day, if a song is popping off within a certain demographic, then it's just gonna let it fly. There's no reason why I would like decide to put that down. And your experiences so far seem to indicate that.
I would agree. I mean, I was always in exactly the same boat. I thought I might be shooting myself in the foot, to be honest. And I think the only thing that changed it in my mind was I focused on that lo-fi stuff for ages. promoted it for a lot of time, and then went back to the alternative rock stuff. And that is what I am going to be sticking to moving forward because that is what I enjoy to perform the most, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But what cemented it that it isn't a problem in my mind is that one of the indie rock songs of mine got onto an editorial playlist. So that means that they are able to decipher, you know, oh, he does lo-fi, but he has alternative rock music. Even though the lo-fi stuff's got the most streams, we would feature that on an editorial playlist. And one of the ways as well, though, that I think it got onto it was I was sending a lot of traffic to that song for about 3 weeks.
Mm.
So I didn't even get added to an editorial playlist straight away. Like, happened 3 weeks after. I think it was averaging about 30 to 50 streams a day at the time.
Yeah.
And then it went up to about like 200 to 300, basically. And that was on Fresh Finds Rock. And again, that's another thing. That had 130,000 followers on it at the time, that playlist. But it was only generating about 300 streams a day.
Mm, mm, mm,
That's
mm.
another big thing. If you are setting all of your, if you're acknowledging success as being getting onto an editorial playlist, it's not all it
Right.
cracked up to be, and it
Right,
doesn't
right,
last
right.
forever as well.
Yeah.
And a third observation I found is that sometimes you can get taken off those playlists, and the momentum doesn't necessarily continue after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I spoke to you about this the other day when we were catching up, how I had a song which in my mind would very, very closely match a well-known artist. I thought if people hear this song that are fans of that other artist, they will love the song. And so I did an ad campaign for it. And it had a phenomenal had like 90% plus click-through rate, 90% save rate. Just like in like people, they probably thought it was the other artist. That's how, in terms of genre, it's so closely matched. Um, but yeah, no people that were directly led to this individual song would save it, or like it, or add it to playlists. Again, it was like a crazy save rate. If they and then I also tested sending them to my artist page, and they would listen to the song and then some of the other songs, but then they would follow me, but then they would not save the song. So it was like this either or thing where they only had enough energy to take one action. And people became, they would listen to that song, but then they would not explore my other music. So it kind of points to what you were just saying. You can end up on a playlist and people will listen to it because it's on the playlist and they might enjoy it in the moment. It's not to say anything about the song. It's just people's behavior that we can all, I guess, identify with, is where there's you can be exposed to something, but to turn that into fandom is another thing, which repeated exposure and your brand and all that kind of stuff we can talk about. But yeah, it just shows that there's this different angles that we can attack this from.
It's so true. And I think like what I keep seeing now is like it's the people doing really unconventional stuff, which is nothing related to their music. Sometimes they make memes or whatever, but they end up getting a lot of people through to their music page through content that's not necessarily even promoting the music. Just a key example, who's playing this instrument, and then you have your band sat there, and then they guess who's playing the instrument.
Right,
I'm
right, right.
seeing posts like that, even on YouTube channels where these guys don't have any subscribers. They're getting millions of views, and suddenly they're overnight getting thousands of subscribers. I think TikTok and Instagram Reels are the same, to be honest. There's a lot of opportunity for growth if you're kind of indirect, covert, and sort of a bit smart about it, and not necessarily trying to drive your music down people's throats because that's what everyone's doing.
So yeah, that's a really interesting topic of the roundabout ways of promoting your music, not just being listen to my song, listen to my song. There's a time and place for that when you put something out. Have there been any interesting, do you have any more interesting examples that you've seen, or maybe things that you've tried yourself without giving away the secrets?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been getting into marketing a little bit more recently, and one of the things they were saying is within the first 2 seconds, you've got to make someone laugh or make them angry
Right.
or something along those lines. So I guess when you put it like that, you can very easily think, right, laugh. You can do comedic content with the band, as we were mentioning earlier, who's playing the guitar,
Yeah.
what personality types, do jokes about each of the members. Try to bring the band alive without doing any of the music. Perhaps you can put some of the music in the background. Another way that well, unfortunately works, but that's the world we live in, is provocation and
Yeah.
basically pissing people off in the opening. And that will instantly grasp someone's attention and it will make people take action. And at the end of the day, that is what you're trying to do. So if you used to think about all of the feuds between rock bands of the past, that
Exactly.
used to be that's what gave a lot of the bands fame, or also skyrocketed them to further fame.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
we're going to create that rivalry, aren't we, Cornelis? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. We know a band that has been doing that quite well on TikTok, the controversy, the humor, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculously over the top, but they were I don't think they do it anymore or not as much, but they were getting a lot of traction, a lot of comments. A lot of people were just sick of them, like you guys are spamming everywhere, this kind of stuff. But it was working, and has worked because they seem to be doing quite well. Um, I think with that kind of stuff, you always have to, you do have to be careful. I myself, I had a piece of content that went viral on TikTok, and I got something like 800,000 views, thousands of comments. Basically, so in the UK we have something called the Brit Awards, which is like a music industry award thing, and I looked at all the people that were nominated, and I looked up which expensive schools they went to when they were kids and how much it costs per term or per year. And so I had the photo of the artist, the name of the school, and how much it costs to go to that school. And then at the end, I put a picture of myself, like, didn't go to a special school. Now, personally, I don't really look, people have all kinds of advantages and disadvantages in life, and so I'm not necessarily hating on these artists, but
Mm.
I thought it was like a fun, like an opportunity to make a bit of clickbait content because the awards were happening that weekend, right? Um, but it became like in the comments, people arguing back and forth about whether it matters or not. And then some of that ire, some of that negativity got directed to me because they're like, hey, do you have a posh sounding name, or you're just jealous because your music sucks and all that kind of stuff. Now I don't mind negative, like it's water if it ducks back for me, like online hate. It really doesn't matter to me. But I didn't want to have this negative conversation around me and associated with me. And like I said, while I had 800,000 views for that video, and my music was on in the background, I saw like maybe 20 or 30 extra listens. Now, I did
Okay.
make a tiny bit of money from that video going viral, but yeah, it just shows that it works, but also kind of be careful and think about the angle that you're taking, because it could lead to some place that you don't want to don't want to go.
Yeah, yeah, you can get caught up in the hate and then suddenly you're creating hate and you
Yeah.
don't really want
So
that directed
so,
at your
so
music.
I think the example, the band that we were thinking of, their controversy was done in a very funny way. It was so over the top. But I don't know. We could have a real feud if you want. We could like make it real, and then just to sell it and make it more believable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when we were discussing that band there, I think what they've done now is they've taken down all that content, and with TikTok you can, archive the video, so you keep all the likes, you keep all the followers,
Hmm.
you know, and no one really knows any better anymore, I suppose, apart from
Yeah.
the many people who were hating on them before. But I
Yeah.
guess it doesn't matter in the long run, in the end. They say that bad press is good press. But
Yeah.
this is all, yeah, this is kind of different strategies, out of the box strategies, right,
Yeah.
Cornelis? Yeah.
So on that note, one thing I'll just say, and this is a segue into what you can talk about, which is so personally, when it comes to thinking of these kinds of ideas, I'm not always very good at that. But my tip, and it's something a tip I should follow, is when I'm on Instagram, Reels, on TikTok, be cognizant of what is being shown to you. And if it's not what you want to see, make sure that you curate it. So I know, for example, for myself, that if I have different TikTok profiles, because if I'm using my artist TikTok profile, I can really easily get sucked into getting shown all these music marketing gurus, and I don't want to see them on that feed because then I'm reacting to them and I'm chatting to them. It's like, no, I don't want to see that. So I make sure to hold, you can hold down and it'll give you the option to say you're not interested in it and that kind of stuff. And then I try to get well, it depends on what profile I'm using, but if I want to see what other indie rock and rock artists do, then I deliberately go out of my way to look that up and see who's doing well on that kind of front. So this can, as a lead into what your project is, which is tell us about like because you want to help people basically on that front.
Absolutely. I think that the key now is not only is it is best to be an independent artist, but it is also best that we also share knowledge and we all enable each other to use the same tools and help each other grow. Because, like we were discussing earlier, there was quite a long time where I was just sat on my own, kind of trying to hustle all this stuff, and there really is only so far you can get before you realize that you need to grow as a group. Otherwise, you're only going to get so far. And I think that's something that people get caught up in, that you have to create your own platform in order to grow. You can't always depend on all these other services, and you can't always depend on all of the social marketing gurus necessarily, because why don't they have their own successful music account from all this stuff?
Yeah,
Some of them do, and some of them pivot into it, which is the next natural thing because it's another kind of side hustle which makes sense, and they can use their music following, which might not necessarily even be through the methods that they're selling.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they might
yeah,
have
yeah,
had some success elsewhere. They might have had a viral song. They might have had some algorithmic help that you don't know about.
yeah,
So you've
yeah,
got to
yeah.
always be a bit cautious of that. But one of the things that I'm building at the moment amongst a community of musicians, Cornelis obviously involved as well, is this community of independent artists where we basically empower the artist rather than there's a lot of labels, for example, that would take a percentage from the artist. We don't do that. We just believe in giving people the help that they need and showing people what
Well,
to do.
I'll just stop you there. So let's just explain because I don't think we mentioned that. Well, we might have briefly said that at the beginning, but as well as being an artist, you run a label.
Exactly. So it's called New Stuff Records, and I created it at the same time that I started my music because I felt that it's more advantageous to have like an entity above the music artist that I was creating. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it, but it's a really good strategy because it makes you seem like a bigger entity, basically. And you can build that bigger entity in the background, and whatever you do in the background, it all trickles down into your own music project.
Hmm.
So one of the key parts of that for me was at the time in 2020, meta ads weren't being utilized as much. I'm going to stress that because it's much more competitive than it ever was.
Hmm.
But I was essentially sending traffic directly to my playlist, and at the time, the results were phenomenal. Like I was seeing a really good translation from the amount of clicks into streams, which
Mm.
is like quite rare. And I essentially just kept building and building and releasing more lo-fi. So, for example, if you have a playlist that has really good engagement and then you can put 10 songs on it, you get 10 times the engagement. You can see how it can very quickly become something bigger. And
Mm.
another tranche of the new stuff records, like aside from the digital stuff, was in the last year or two, I started hosting shows. I've hosted about 100 artists at 60 shows,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they range from musical showcases for bands where people just want to perform or they want to support independent venues or they just want to create a showcase together. I did that at the Troubadour and the Water Rats. I've also volunteered at Map Studio Cafe in Kentish Town and done acoustic nights. I think that's what it's all about. It's all about supporting the independent community because it's not just the artists, it's the venues, it's the modern condition where rents are going up, and also there aren't as many people going to gigs, I think, since COVID.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of stuff that's kind of overtaken it. A lot of people will prefer to like stay in rather than go out. There's lots of
yeah,
small little things, but I think overall it's just all about supporting the independent community in whatever capacity we can. That's the
yeah.
key.
And so now you're taking that online now because you were, yeah, I was going to raise that you've been putting on gigs, you've signed somebody to your label that you've promoted, and now you're taking that experience, both the real life stuff and your experience promoting music online to build an online community.
Absolutely.
It
And that's
hasn't, it's,
kind of what
it
I've
has
tried to
not
do on
been
Twitter.
launched yet, has it? It will launch soon.
Sorry, mate. Would you say so
It,
then?
it hasn't been launched yet, this community, has it? But it will soon.
So it's got, I have the team in place basically. And what I'm slowly doing is cultivating a community on Twitter at the moment, which I'm going to cross purpose into this other community. But it's going to be quite exclusive in the sense that it's invite only. So we're going to be looking at artists where we can see real potential, and then we want to give them the tools to just basically grow themselves.
Mm,
And
mm.
through that, what will happen is everyone else involved in the community will always benefit. That's how it will work because as I said, when you're in your silo and you're working alone, there really is a kind of ceiling that you hit eventually.
Yeah,
Um, and I've been through that myself, and I'm at that point now where it's all about building a community. And
yeah,
there's too many people working on their own, and it's also tough, and it kind of
yeah,
gets lonely, and you kind
yeah,
of doubt yourself, and you can get yourself into a lot of ways of thinking. And if you were on your own releasing your first track, you think it's brilliant, you spent months on it, and then your mum is your only listener.
yeah, yeah,
That is demoralizing. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
having these people around you, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think we touched earlier on the music marketing gurus, and as I've said in previous videos, a lot of them have lots of useful things to say, and I'm never dismissive of anybody, but as you said, not many of them are actually doing it themselves. And so like I will take Damien Keys as an example because I really like Damien Keys actually because he plays bass and he's played in bands and he's gigged and he works closely with a lot of bands. And so the only reason I'm going to mention him is because I actually do like a lot of what he has to say. But sometimes he will say something like, "Okay, it's your first gig, invite all your friends down." And I'm thinking, my friends don't come to gigs, and it's all these little things that or you know, I never hear anybody talk about, that time when your bass player leaves the band and you have to find a new place, all these roadblocks that we hit all the time, but they don't get talked about. And the reason is, and I don't, some of it is naive. Well, some of it is because some of these gurus have never been the independent musician, so they don't know about all these roadblocks. So that's one point. The other thing is that if you are a guru slash a consultant, what will happen is that you will accumulate all the success stories. You will only talk about the clients that were success stories, right? You won't talk about the client that, like I said, the band broke up and they had to start from scratch again, or all the thing. And this is not just in the music marketing world, it's in any aspect of business. Any business consultants, they will only talk about their success stories. So, like I said, I think you should not like don't be you should still be open-minded and learn from everybody. But what's great is if you can talk with people and learn with people and learn from and learn together with people that are doing the thing and with you. And so everything that you are talking about, it's all from the perspective of somebody that's actually putting out their music themselves and promoting it themselves. And that is so valuable. And again, what you said about community building, something that I've been trying to take inspiration from is hip hop because from what I've seen, and I'm not a hip hop head, so I don't know all the details, but from what I've seen in the world of hip hop for quite a few decades now, there's this idea of the collective where you have several rappers, several producers, graphic artists, videographers they're not a band, but they're working together, and often that's how they will have their big blow up. I think the one big example that I can think of, the earliest example that I can think of is the Wu-Tang Clan. And once they blew up as a collective, then they had their own solo careers. And I think the more recent example it must be more than 10 years ago now, but I guess the Odd Future, I think that's what they're called, which
Yes.
is Tyler the Creator and some other people came out of. And when you look at the history, it's actually, it was a bunch of producers, a bunch of rappers, as I said, other people that are doing other creative things, videographers, graphic artists, that kind of stuff. And so I think when I look at my own core genre, which is indie rock and rock music, there's a bit of as you said, silo, like being in your own little world, um, just like being all focused on yourself. And I get that because it takes all your energy and attention. But sometimes I think there's a bit of solipsism. I don't know if that's the right word. And the thing that always bugs me that I see is you put on a gig and the people that arrive to watch their friend's band and then everybody leaves and even the band leaves straight away. And I get it. I get it. Some bands they've traveled from outside, took them 2 hours to drive in and they have to get home. I get that 100%. But sometimes you're like, dude, come on. I watched your band. Why can't you watch my band? And so, and it's that's a specific example, but it's indicative of this, like, as I said, this solipsism where it's like, well, I'm just focused on myself all the time. And what's really great about what you're doing is that you're like you said, you put on these gigs, and of course, at some of the gigs you perform yourself. Hey, why not? You're putting it on. You're putting on the show, but you're giving an opportunity to all these artists, and you're bringing an audience, and you're promoting them online, and you're doing so much to build a community. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think as well, I will say as a warning though, to host, perform, and organize shows can get stressful. All right,
Yeah, I did.
I've
So I
been
did
there.
it. I did it once myself, and there's a reason I haven't done it since. So, um, yeah,
'Cause-
I don't know. Like, what I've thought about is I have thought about hosting a night again, but well, I need to have a little bit more of an audience before I do it. But that's why I'm so keen to hitch my wagon to your bandwagon. Is that the right way
yes,
of saying?
exactly.
And but I want to do, I'm conscious of I want to be a help. I don't want to be a taker. I don't want to just like come along and feed off of what your hard work. So I really, and as I said, I think you did you use the word node earlier? Did you
Hmm.
use the word node? Because that I think that is such a crucial way of thinking about it, is where you and you talked about it as well about your online community that you want to build with where you share knowledge and help each other out. I think this idea of the node is amazing because what you said, you're empowering the individual, but at the same time we are becoming more powerful nodes within a network. And it's that great that great idea where you're not subsumed and anonymous within a group, and you're also not as you said, a silo on your own. You are an empowered individual within a network, and I think that's such an amazing way to think about it. And so you're building yourself up, and at the same time building other people up, and yeah, it's a great
That's the
idea.
key. That's the key. I think honestly, like that is the future, to be honest. I think the future is playlists, and I think the future is also independent artists. And I think it's also independent artists supporting each other, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, it's like a kind of centralized place, drive it all through the same place. I have like an existing platform of playlists, and I also feel like I've done all of the hard work, so like artists don't have to in a way. Like I've done the pointless campaigns, I've done the marketing service places, I've done the gurus, I've done it all in a way, and I feel like
Yeah.
I've seen the result of all of it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, like I said, I think the future is bright for independent artists, but I think has to be all about collaboration. That's the key. And what you're saying earlier about Odd Future completely resonates with me. I think that's almost reminiscent of what I'm trying to build in a way, but mine's like slightly more geared towards giving people the tools so that they can thrive on their own, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the difference between hip hop and other genres is that it's in terms of logistics, it's a bit easier to support each other within the music because you can literally do a guest verse or you can make a beat for somebody else. And with the logistics of that kind of thing is a little bit harder in other genres like pop and rock. It's not impossible. There are pop and rock artists that do collabs and release tracks that they've worked on together. So
Hmm.
it's not an impossible thing, and it's certainly something that I want to explore and have a go at myself. But I think there's going to be some slight differences depending on what genre you are in. Maybe, in jazz, I think, for example, it's all about the live performance, and there, of course, is like ways that you can work together. So it's going to differ depending on the genre that you are in, but there's certainly things to be learned from that. And what I've started doing, well, I've done it from the start, but I'm really big on promoting the other musicians that I work with. And it's again, it's not just altruistic. It's not just because I'm a nice guy. It's because every time I make a little short and I show Leo who drummed on my last couple of tracks and I make him look cool, he shares that with his friends. It's like I'm being nice to him and he will share it and part of why he shares it is because partially it's good for his ego that he looks cool, and he's also partially being nice. So it's always win for everybody. So I'm really I think on a practical note for people that are in bands or in kind of band kind of situations where you have
Yes.
working with, I think it's really important to do that. And that's something that is that we have as an advantage compared to somebody that is making beats in their room and rapping over it, which is admirable in its own way. But then again, you're like in this little silo. So it's all swings and roundabouts. Different genres have different advantages. And yeah, so it's really exciting what you're doing, that you're creating this community that you're so that people can share kind of the practical nuts and bolts of it. And as you said earlier, you have all the real world experience, which a lot of the gurus with even with their good intentions they don't really have, and that's I think a frustration that us independent musicians have is like, yeah, that's great in theory, but in practice, yeah,
Yeah, I think what I think I'm trying to do is show everyone that I started from nothing. I literally know exactly what it's like to be your only listener. I know what it's like to have nothing, and I've been through a lot of stuff as well. And I think a lot of the stuff you might find nowadays, like these big artists that come from nowhere and they're just suddenly huge, it's all not real. There's a huge amount of business and agreements, and probably a lot of PR firms have connections with distributors and music services. So don't ever get kind of put down by people who have that leg up. They have that, sometimes it's nepotism, sometimes it's that they found a really influential person in their life who was able to give them that level up. Don't ever put yourself down, and also never compare your journey to others wherever you are on the journey, because you never know where you're going to be.
mm,
Even in a year, so much can change, honestly. But I think that's just such a big problem nowadays, that the what's the words, the arbitrary nature of success and where it comes from and how it came about. Because I keep seeing it. I see these artists, I'm like, what is the reason for your success? This is not the music. There
yeah,
has to
yeah,
be another thing working in the background, and you see
yeah.
it all the time. I don't know if you experience
Yeah,
that.
no, I do, and sometimes I do a bit of digging, and sometimes I find it, and yeah, again, like I'm not necessarily, again, like what you were pointing out, I'm not necessarily, if I had something that could help me out, I would take it, so I'm not against these people doing it. But what I'm trying to, like I said, don't be down about yourself because you don't have that thing. I mean, even within the music marketing thing, I show how much easier it is for me to get views and subscribers on this channel compared to my artist channel. And it has nothing to do with the music. It's just because the behavior of somebody that's searching for information and help, that behavior is much different. If people will like and subscribe and leave comments, it's much different than somebody that's listening to music. They don't need to subscribe to my channel to listen to my music. So sometimes you have people that say, look at me, I'm a music marketing guru. I've got 1 million followers and da 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 da. But it's like, yeah, that's because it's a completely different niche compared to building music. Not to say that some of it doesn't transfer over or that you can learn from it, but the act of building some kind of more advice giving YouTube channel is completely different from music. And then when it comes to specific artists, I've yeah, I don't want to name names because again, it's not like about I don't want to have negativity on other people. But for example, there's one person that has a relationship is a family member of somebody that works on a music related TV show, and they then got to open on that TV show. And it's like, if you don't know, like they just say, I'm opening on this TV show, which is what and then you just think, well, they must be amazing. But then I did some digging, some internet sleuthing, and I'm like, okay, that's the reason why, and not that they aren't good. They're good, they're fine. But like, if you don't know about that, then you might beat yourself up and think, oh man, I suck because I don't get those opportunities. Well, it's like, well,
It's so easy to build, just like it's so easy to beat yourself up, and yeah, just in the kind of society we live in now, as I said earlier, the arbitrary nature of fame. Someone can just tickle an algorithm right with the right video and bring a kind of, band that don't have any kind of footprint into the kind of spotlight, almost, and then they're kind of going viral. And but as we say, yeah, comparison is the thief of joy in all elements of life. Music is
hmm.
what you got to think is like, would it have all been worth it if you did music your whole life, but you never got any appreciation or kind of, I don't know, I guess attention for it, but then perhaps in a couple of hundred years, you'll come some kind of old kind of musical artifact that's discovered at a
Yeah,
later point for a different reason. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? There is so many different ways of kind of grading success, and
yeah,
yeah, it's not about what necessarily is even going on right now.
yeah.
That's something to think
I
about.
think the advantage that we have compared to the past is that the worst case scenario in the past was that you recorded an album with your friends, or maybe you got signed to a record label and it flopped, or something happened, like a life circumstance happened where somebody got ill, things. I've heard stories where stuff that was completely out of control of the band or artist impacted their career in like it ended it basically, and it had nothing to do with the music. It was just something random. I've heard so many stories like that. And the worst case scenario then was that you perhaps had a shed full of albums that nobody ever heard. And the great thing that we should really be grateful about now is that the worst case scenario is that your music is out there and like forever. And even and we all have lofty aspirations. And I've certainly had that moment where it's 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it's raining, and I'm standing on a train station because I'm coming home from an open mic, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Why can't I just like hang out at the bar with friends after work and like just do that instead of, I've had those moments, and I probably, and I still have those moments sometimes. But as you said, you have this intrinsic enjoyment that you get out of it. There are other things that you get out of it. But then if we want to still be practical and still be ambitious, you can still say, look, at least your album's not going to be in a shed and nobody's ever going to hear it. Because like it's always your music's always going to be out there. You're always going to be able to create some community or fandom around it, even if it's going to be 100 people or 200 people. So even the bleakest prospect, I think there's still something there, and that's to be honest, that's what keeps driving me forward because it's like, well, the music is still out there and people are still discovering it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's true actually. It's almost like the only way you can go is up actually, because you are where you are now, and you never know how many people are going to discover it at any given point actually.
yeah.
So as long
True.
as you're in the game at the end of the day,
Exactly,
as long, if your
exactly.
music wasn't out there, then you there is no chance of that ever happening, you know.
Yeah.
So you've got to be in the game to contribute and participate.
Okay, on that note, I think we've come to a natural end in the discussion. I think there's some takeaways there, like practically in terms of like how to go about being an independent artist, which is like take the bull by the horns, be the captain of your own ship, whatever, however you want to say it. Network with other people, become a powerful node, lift up other people so that you get lifted up yourself. Um, there's ways of putting yourself out there, promoting your music through playlists, through social media. Look towards the people that are actually doing it. Don't get sucked into listening to, you can learn from the music marketing gurus, but make sure that you are looking at what other artists are doing that are getting the results that you are, and not necessarily the huge world famous artists, but maybe the people are just ahead of you that are getting a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand listens or views on their Instagram. What are they doing? Like it could be a little funny little skit, it could be like a meme. uh look at what's just ahead of you. I think that's where there's a lot to learn from. So and at the end as well, we talked about, I guess, kind of the mindset of like staying positive and how especially in this era, your music's not going to sit in the shed. It's going to be out there for people to discover. So and as you said, if you're as long as you're still in the game's never going to end. It's always going to be there. So you can be promoting it. You can always be promoting it. The music's always going to be new to somebody out there that you might have released it a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but somebody out there has never heard it before. And when you think about all the music that goes viral from decades ago, like it's the music's always going to be there for people to discover. So stay in the game.
Exactly. Exactly. Couldn't
Okay.
agree more.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to leave links to Oliver's music below. I'm going to leave links to his record label. Or if you want to look it up yourself, Oliver New is the music and New Stuff Records is the record label. He's on all the social media platforms if you want to look it up. He's giving out advice, he's helping independent musicians, so definitely check it out. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll speak to you all next time.
Thanks for not calling us. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon.